Today we have on the show Pastor Sam. Let me tell you, what do you think about married couples watching porn? Like that's it. Married couples watching porn. In fact, both from a secular perspective and a Christian perspective. So a lot of people argue that it spices up their marriage, it spices up relationship, while some people might be against it.
It's a very interesting question. Should Christian couples watch porn in order to spice their marriage?
Not just Christian couples.
Oh. The easy answer is no.
Okay.
It's definitely no, and for a lot of reasons.
Okay.
It's definitely no, and for a lot of reasons. You see, well, porn, you're talking about whether it's secular or Christian, but I am first of all a Christian before I am any other thing.
Yes.
So definitely that would also inform my the way I approach the discourse.
Yes,
typically, like, God is a creator. He's the Alpha, he's the Omega, he's a creator. The devil does not create, but rather the devil corrupts or the devil perverses. And so if we talk about pornography, then you should also see that on one part there's something called sex. And pornography is basically like a perversion of God's original intent and design for sex. There is a design for sex. And we know that according to scriptures and even the way it ideally should be, sex is only allowed within the context of marriage, where the two actually become one. And that's because if you look at the concept of pornography, one question you should ask yourself is, who gets the glory? And just like every other sexual sin per se, who gets the glory? It's definitely not the Lord. If you look at pornography, basically it's two things. It is self-satisfying, self-gratifying. And so even if you are coming from a secular point of view, right, it's opposed to the concept of marriage, because marriage is not meant to be selfish. There should be that oneness. Porn basically is about me, myself, and I. No matter how we ice this. As a married man, why would I want to see another woman naked?
Okay.
Why would I want to see another man naked apart from my spouse?
Wow.
What exactly is the idea? What exactly is the concept? If the two are meant to be one, that oneness is within a core. It is within a concept called God's design and God's marriage. So beyond talking about secularism and all that, I know secular. The term secular is one word that we use in an attempt to legalize certain things we want to do. Whether it's secular or not, God is the creator of the earth. God has a design and an intent. And if we go back to scriptures, which basically forms my conviction, it was for the purpose of marriage that there may be pleasure for the couples, that there may be procreation, and whatever is outside his design, definitely, whether it's secular or not, should not be done.
Now you talk about design. You talk about the design. A lot of people might be, okay, what is this design? What is God's design for sex?
Sex is a beautiful thing. That's the truth. It is one concept that leans towards a deeper understanding of the communion we're supposed to have with the Christ. That oneness, that intimacy. And with that, you might not exactly see clear-cut rules in the scripture, but it must be God-honoring, and it should be in such a way that the two find pleasure in it. The two find that intimacy and depth. And because sex is about intimacy, it's not just about emotional intimacy or psychological intimacy, it's about that oneness in body, soul, and spirit. And so looking at that, basically, it's more like saying that God has crafted this thing, but as a couple, right, sex is something that should be cultivated. In fact, as a couple, one of the things you're supposed to do is to learn the body of your spouse. It's something that the two of you should cultivate together. And because marriages are unique, the people in marriages are unique, you must learn the body of your spouse and cultivate sex in a beautiful way without inviting strangers to your bedroom.
Oh, okay, that's deep. Without inviting strangers to your bedroom. So in this case, in this scenario, when you have like porn, you are literally inviting strangers.
For me, it's inviting strangers because imagine I'm in the room with my wife and there is porn. Now she's looking at that guy, I'm looking at the other woman.
Okay, wow.
Technically, what are we doing?
Wow. Okay. Okay. That's true.
Yeah, so for me, it's inviting strangers into that sanctity called marriage, into that bed that should not be defiled. It is the man and the woman that become one flesh. But when a third party begins to come, whether it's virtual or not, there is a way it abuses and informs the mind of whether the husband or the wife. And before you know, you begin to have certain kind of unrealistic expectations. At some point, your spouse becomes not enough.
Okay.
Yes, I've spoken with certain married people who, even though they were married, they were still masturbating. There is definitely no how you can separate pornography from masturbation. Yeah. And at one point, we all come again across pornography. At one point in my life, when I was single, I know I had that challenge and all that. But one critical thing you need to know is that there is a design, and this is a perversion. And in the end, what you end up doing is to abuse the body that the Lord has given you to advance His purpose upon the earth realm. And so, irrespective of whatever your school of thought says, it is you basically more like dishonoring your body and dishonoring the sanctity of marriage by bringing a third party into it.
Okay.
And if you even look at it on ethical basis and Christian perspective, the porn industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
It's also one of the industries that is largely responsible for issues with respect to girls trafficking for sex and all those kinds of things. So why would I, even if I was not a Christian, but if I am secular in quote, if I am moral to an extent, why would I want to advance a cause that dehumanizes humans?
Yes.
And reduces one thing porn does is that, especially for couples, and for me that's the biggest, is that it objectifies your spouse. Like there is a downgrade from her or him being the image of God to becoming an object for pleasure.
Oh, wow.
And so why would I want to do that? The day we went to the altar, or the day we got married, it was for better, we are one, and we exchanged our vows because I saw her like me. I saw her as my better half, as I would put it. But if I now begin to do this, I am now gradually downgrading her from being that better half into an object for pleasure.
Yeah.
And I know you're talking about, both views, Christian, secular, and all that, but I'm a pastor. I will still talk about the Christian part of this. And for me, I know this is one of the lessons I have learned from the Lord. As a husband, because in the end, if we're even talking about the fact that we want porn to spice our marriage, it means that there is a problem in the home. It means that there are deeper issues beyond this, beyond sex. Wow. There are deeper issues. And so, as a husband, one of the things you must know, as a Christian husband in this case, for me, is that it is your job to create an atmosphere in your house that would help your woman become the woman in the Christ. I am saying this, that one of my jobs as a husband, beyond providing food, clothing, shelter, is to provide for her an atmosphere that would make her more like the Christ. Technically speaking, it's more like saying it is my job to preserve her purity before the Lord. And so if we now watch pornography together, definitely I'm not doing that. In fact, it's a far cry from the speakings of Scripture in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Whatever is of good report, whatever, if there is any virtue, think on these things. And so the attention shifts from just me as the husband to somebody else that she has seen in the video. And comparison begins to come, competitions begin to come, and before you know it, it is just not working.
I've watched porn a lot. I mean, it took God's hand to deliver me
We've been delivered.
To deliver me from pornography. It was God's mercies. But then, someone will say, well, can sex be learned? You mentioned, of course, one thing you need to do is to learn the body of your spouse. Then if I must learn, is there, I mean, don't you think these are materials? There are resources that I could leverage on to learn how to...
That's interesting. Maybe you misunderstood me, but let me say something quickly. Because one of the biases I've heard about couples watching porn together is that, but this is my wife, this is my husband, and we're watching it together. But if something is a sin alone, it is a sin if we do it together.
Wow. Okay.
So that union does not make it legal. It doesn't make it legal. In fact, your marriage bond strengthens a vista that the devil could use as an opening to the home.
Yes, sir.
And so I know people have talked about that, but my wife is my husband. I'm only doing it with her, and I know she knows that she trusts me, I trust her, and this is just here. It's just to help us. But in saying that, right, we are spiritual beings, but we're also biological beings.
Yes, sir.
It's biology. You are not taught.
Okay. You're right.
It's biology.
Of course.
I have a first degree in biochem, and I at least understand how some of these things work. It's biology. But when I'm talking about learning your spouse's body, cultivating the beauty of sex together, it's more like saying going through that journey together, going through that experience together. Being open about your about your desires, being open about how exactly you feel, what you are open to, what you are not open to, and in the end, knowing that this is an act that should glorify the Lord.
Okay.
And I know you talked about that where there's just that compulsion and that desire to do it and all that. One thing about pornography is that it could easily become an addiction. And porn, right, is the easiest and the cheapest of addictions. All you need is a phone. You have, in fact, some networks you'll be able to watch certain things on free data, and all of that. So it's more like the go-to thing. It's the go-to thing, and that thing about the brain. There's a way porn rewires the brain.
Yeah.
It's the same excitement centers, the same kind of hormones for any kind of addiction. And before you know, you begin to have compulsive behaviors. They're like cravings. And that is why you get to a point where your wife no longer becomes enough, because there is a craving that she will not be able to meet, because you have been able to enter into certain expectations that you saw on the screen. Anything on that. The whole idea would always be that want to spice things up, want to hit up our sexual life and all that. And most times, right, this begins on the wings of certain fantasies.
Yeah,
yes, fantasies or expectations. Expectations or something we have seen, something we have heard. I had a case recently where a woman started putting pressure on her husband because, according to the woman, she had this conversation with her friend, and the husband of this friend is able to go a lot of rounds.
Oh, God. Okay.
And is able to go a lot of minutes.
Yes.
And in this case, her husband is like directly opposite that. And started putting a lot of pressure and all that. And he just started looking for ways to help. And he got into all kinds of drugs. He, wanting to please his wife, took all kinds of things. In the end, long story short, he became sick because of all these drugs he kept taking just to satisfy her.
His wife.
And in the end, he left. He died. And so just look at the pressure, the implications, and that's no longer intimacy. Yes, there is a difference between intensity and intimacy. What porn does is intensity. 5 hours, 3 hours, and all the styles as the way it's said. Yes, but at times like that, I don't. He's not a 2 minute man, 3 minutes, and that's different. We'll talk. I think that's another case entirely. Talking about things like erectile dysfunction and all those kind. I'm not talking about that, but just literally wanting the guy to go 2 hours, 3 hours, and all. Intimacy is not intensity. It's not, at times it's not necessarily about that. It's about that moment where it is God, that moment that is God honoring, that moment that actually brings you guys into oneness, beyond the intensity, beyond the pressure, beyond the demand, and beyond what is out there. You guys are a unique couple. Build your home.
A lot of people disagree with what you just said now. In fact,
about the 5 hours, the 6 hours.
Yes, a lot of women would, I dare to say, a lot of women would disagree with you, and a lot of men will also disagree with you.
And that's because, right, we've been given a warped mentality.
Yes.
We believe that a man believes that if he's able to go 3, 4, 5 hours like sex, then he's a man. He's a strong man.
Oh, wow.
And that's why maybe some of us are exactly not growing, because the energy that should be channeled for certain things is channeled for that part exactly. So we've been told that your one sign of being manly is that you're able to go hours. Our women also believe, apologies, maybe a few women also believe that my guy needs to be able to go hours, so then go show saying, now man, him be.
Yeah.
Yes, like so there is that, and who told us that, who did that to us? It's not exactly how we should. I'm not saying if you go 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, it is well with you, the Lord be with you. But and that's why I said, right, it is something that should be learned, it's something that should be cultivated. Like when I mean something that should be learned, like learn your spouse's body. And that would now begin to talk about things like orgasm. You need to understand that women are different. You need to learn your spouse's body. How exactly does she respond? What does she do? What do you need to do? And all those kinds of things. And you can learn that. You don't need to go. You don't form an extracurricular materials.
Exactly. I mean,
and she will tell you. Like you would listen to her, do all those things. I'm not saying
that's very important. Now you just hit a very vital point. I mean that we don't often hear. It's like listen to her. That means there's a communication that should be happening even during sex. That is very important.
Yes.
During sex, post-sex, you guys understand your bodies, as you said, rightly said. Talking about the intimacy.
Yes, and I'm not saying
5 hours is bad.
No, well, exactly. If that's, and I'm not saying 1 minute is good.
No, of course.
I'm just, and I think I've provided balance.
Yeah, you've provided balance on that aspect. Now, there are certain. This one question now is, how then do you would you tell couples that have started engaging in these actions, porn for instance, whether it's that started destroying their homes or it's yet to destroy their home, how would you advise them to go about it? How would you advise them to break out of this very trap that is porn?
Well, like I said, if a couple are looking at porn as an option to spice up their marriage, then it is indicative of the fact that there are deeper problems. And they would have to, one major thing that they can start doing is to be open with their communication. Talk to each other, and let your spouse understand. Just talk openly, no secrets, plainly. Just come out how exactly you feel about things, and all that. And you know, sexual intimacy is key in marriage. That's the truth, but it is not the only kind of intimacy in marriage. But a lot of things build towards that. And for me, you know, most times, especially for husbands or for the guys, when we're wooing the ladies, we take them to all kinds of places. But when we marry them, that's all. There is nothing bad in still going out on date nights, going out together, craft those beautiful memories. Because sex is first of all psychological before it's biological.
Okay.
And so craft those beautiful memories, talk openly, go for date nights, and I would always talk to a counselor. Yes, a Christian marriage counselor. Talk to a counselor. You know, even on the part of the church, I think we can really help. And I'm talking about this from my conviction as a pastor. You know, most times before we join a couple, we do all kinds of counseling. For there are churches that do counseling for up to a year.
Yeah.
Before they join you, 6 months. There are all kinds of very intensive marriage courses for people who want to get married. And some of these are churches leave the couple when they join them. But I believe that the church has a vital role to play in an ongoing marriage counseling. Let there be some kind of accountability. Let there be a forum where couples are taught, couples are given that atmosphere to become intimate. And it's a journey, like I said. I'm married and will be 5 years in a couple of weeks, and trust me, the level of intimacy with my wife the day we started and now is different. Like, you cannot compare it. It has grown, and that's because a lot of deliberateness is put into this thing. It's something that has to be worked out. It's like salvation. You have to work it out. You'd have issues. It is something that would have to be worked out. You'd have those frank and sincere conversations. You would have those moments, those episodes. But in the end, right, intimacy does not mean that there won't be conflict in marriage. But there is a journey towards deeper understanding of the Lord, deeper understanding of your spouse. And in the end, we can have beautiful homes here on earth.
Wow. Well, that's a good one, sir. That's a good one, sir. So, in communication is very key, especially in trying to in trying to break free from such? I mean, okay, trying to get close, at least have better intimacy with one's spouse.
Yes, communication is key. A lot of things you could do together within the Christian circle. I would always talk about prayers also.
Okay.
Spiritual intimacy could also help that.
Okay.
Studying together, just really having those open communications.
Okay. What about breaking out of that porn? That's what I'm asking right now. Right.
Yes, to break out within
Like
the
for
context.
those that have found themselves in a trap.
Well, they have to first of all agree that this is not
Is it
the right way
Okay.
to go about. The sex is not just our problem; it's just a reflection of deeper issues.
Mhm.
They have to agree. That's one. Number two, they would have to seek help. They would have to seek help and talk to a Christian counselor. I know the whole sex therapy thing is still quite new in Nigeria, but I know that there are people there are professionals that can help. And why I would ask that you seek help or look for maybe an older couple you could be accountable to is even when, for example, the wife wants to break out of it and the husband doesn't, it is still a problem.
Yes.
And so it's something that they would have to deliberately work together, accept that there is a problem and work together, seek help, and just know that we have some renewing of the mind to do.
Okay. Okay, this is, I think, for how to deal with past experiences. A guy gets married, but before he got married, or a brother gets married, a sister gets married, before they got married, they had probably 2 other relationships where they had experiences, all forms of perversions that will later follow them to even their very own homes, their current home, I mean, at that time. How do we get over that? Because I've seen a lady who came crying to her pastor. The problem was that, not that she didn't love her husband, she loved her husband so much, but the problem is that her body wants another person, because the experiences she had built over time had gone deep down the subconscious. She can't find a way to even break out of them. So even when she's with her husband, she's fantasizing about another person, or even when she's with her husband, there is an experience she had with another person that
this is a whole new ball game entirely.
Yes.
That will not be able to trash here.
Okay.
And this is it.
Yeah.
You and that is why the Bible cautions against being joined to somebody who is not your spouse. That's one of the reasons why the Bible hammers heavily on fornication and adultery, sexual sins and all that, because it's going to be beyond you. It's going to affect everything about you, beyond the fact that it becomes a doorway, a doorway into all kinds of things. It has a way of affecting your relationship in the future, even your marriage. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I had to work with someone recently where, even though she had left a past relationship, and there were all kinds of experiences there, but there was a way she still wanted the old in the new.
Okay.
And a lot of our Christian brothers and sisters go through this. Especially all those fellowship gym and all that. Papa broke up with this one and all that, but she still wants Papa. And I had to tell her at some point, there's a way we bring baggages into the new. And this is not that man. This is somebody else. And so it has to be like an ongoing journey that begins with a lot of deliberate effort. And trust me, it's going to be difficult. Those images, renewing the mind is something constant. You cannot forget those things, except if we do a brain transplant or we erase everything in your brain. But that's where renewing the mind comes. It is something you do daily. It is something you do consistently, because whatever is full cannot be filled. So the first thing you do is to begin to deliberately empty your mind and renew your mind. How do you do that? Scripture, prayers. Find your tribe. Find people who can pour into you, speak into you, move away from anything that would still help facilitate those memories. And I always talk about being open with your spouse. Even when you guys are getting into a relationship, it's okay to let your spouse know, this is the kind of past I had. This is where I'm coming from. So that the spouse, if the spouse is truly a believer, the spouse will be able to understand with you and also help and walk you through some of those things. Lastly, accountability will be key. Talk to somebody who can help you, because 2 are better than 1.
Okay. Now, when you talk about openness,
that's another issue, because I know it's difficult. And even within the church circle, there are things you share with your brother, it becomes a prayer point. There are things you share with another brother, it becomes gossip. So I know, like I've been in the church circle for years, I know, but it is important that you find your circle, find your tribe, and find someone who the Lord would place over you to walk you through that. At times it's a difficult place to be that you cannot come out alone.
Do you think it's okay to tell your spouse everything? Like everything? I mean, don't you think not telling your spouse everything protects her from certain things? Won't you be doing her more good than harm by not telling her?
Well,
I had 50 relationships.
I think it's ideal you say that. Your spouse marries, first of all, your past, your present, and your future.
Well, please, I didn't say that again, sir.
Your spouse marries your past,
Okay.
your present, and your future.
Wow.
So if that is important to you, then you should let her know. Yes, and it might not be like sitting one day and downloading your entire episode.
Okay.
It didn't take one day for me to download my entire episode to my wife. No, it didn't. In fact, I'm not sure I would even have that time. But like conversations will come. There are things that she has to know. There are things that she needs to know, just so that she doesn't hear that from the. At times, I've discovered this in marriage. At times, and in working with couples, it is easier for a spouse to hear of an experience about her spouse from her spouse than her hearing it outside. I've seen it over and over again. And you know your spouse, you know what she can handle, what she can't handle. And I know people would begin to say, okay, I've shared this bit. I'll just keep sharing as the Lord helps me. But I know that you cannot sit down one day and download everything. But you should be open, because your spouse marries your past, your present, and your future.
I mean, I'm still worried. Don't you think if I tell her about that past,
then she would see you in that light.
Not just in that light. Some people might not be able to recover from that, and I'm not saying that she might not be able to, but people might argue.
Well, it also depends on the context in which you are saying it. For me, I am a firm believer in the fact that before you get married, you should have those uncomfortable conversations. And I don't believe, and this is me talking as a Christian and as a pastor, I don't believe in a relationship that let's go out, let's start a relationship so that we see how it goes.
Okay.
I believe you know how it goes. You know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
That is why you are starting. And so if you have that conviction and your spouse has that conviction, she needs to understand that you are coming from somewhere. There is a point I came from before we met at this junction. And so let me recount my story. And it's about conviction. If the Lord has really told you clearly that this is the person, then you'll be willing to. Some truths will be difficult. Some truths will be hard. There is a case I handled where after the lady heard one of the things, the experience of the guy, she cried for days. Do you understand?
Yeah.
But for him, it's like, I'm going to feel guilty if I go to that altar with you and you don't know this part of my life.
Yes.
And trust me, as painful as that might be, it would build trust.
Oh, wow.
It would help intimacy. It would just really help that, make that home beautiful. At times, those thorns are necessary in order to make the rose beautiful. So, and I just think it's important.
Yes,
I'm not making a doctrine out of it,
No,
but I know some people say, no, if I tell, somebody says he came to the office recently, I said, guy, if you know I'd be bad guy, if I tell, like, this girl is too innocent for me to be telling her these things. And that's nice, that's good, you're trying to protect her. But how would you feel she goes to a place and somebody downloads that? It would have been easier if it came from you.
Yeah.
And if you know your spouse, you know what to say, and you know how to say what to say.
Yes. Wow. Any final words?
Well, final word. Two things. Pornography is a scourge even in the church. And I want you to know out there, in case you are heavily wallowing in pornography, God truly delivers men.
Yeah.
But you need to start by talking to someone. The strength of sin is secrecy. Talk to somebody, and I'm sure you would find help. And I know we've just talked about pornography within the Christian context, within and for married couples. But beyond pornography, there are all kinds of sin that is taking away the energy and the wisdom of our youth, from fornication to masturbation. And I just think for somebody out there, it's time to come out, seek the Lord, and God truly delivers men. He helped me, He helped you, He has helped us all, and God truly delivers men. So talk to someone so that we can live that life that Christ has designed that we live in this body.